Namaskar, welcome back to Media Scan. Viewers, it may appear to bring short-term political gains, but harboring and supporting terrorists never brings long-term gains for any establishment. And this truth was reinforced yet again this week when Justin Trudeau announced his decision to resign as Prime Minister. So why is it that countries in various continents, including our neighborhood, try not only to support but train and harbor terrorists as a matter of state policy? This is what we are going to reflect upon in Media Scan this episode, and to help us understand this very complex issue, I have a special panel of guests. But before that, let's look quickly at what is it that is plaguing the world. Earlier this week, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his decision to resign. Political observers say Trudeau's position had become untenable as his ratings were at an abysmal low. All commentators, without exception, agree that the downslide for Trudeau started after his provocative moves towards India. It is also no secret that Canada has been sheltering and giving a free run to Khalistani terrorists. New Delhi's requests for extradition of Khalistani terrorists and gangsters have also fallen on deaf ears. Meanwhile, tension is rife at the Pak-Afghan border as Pakistan is facing the backlash of being the epicenter of terror. Its own people are being attacked almost every day by the same terrorists who were trained and bred in their camps. Mohammad Yunus, as the chief of the interim Bangladesh administration, is also accused of giving a free hand to the Jamaat and other radical and extremist organizations. From the Canada to the UK to Pakistan, powers harboring terror are a threat to entire humanity. So with that quick capsule, let me introduce you to Alok Bansal, well-known author, geopolitical expert, has great study in the subjects of terror, internal security and related issues. Also joining us, senior journalist Aditya Raj Kaul. You have been reading him and listening to him on subjects of internal security, terror and other geopolitical issues. So with both our guests here, we'll be able to go down this topic very quickly. So I'll come to Alok Bansal here. Sir, earlier we saw Justin Trudeau come out of his office and announce in a smiling tone that he had decided to put in his papers, and there was a recommendation to prorogue the parliament. Meanwhile, his party would be choosing a new leader as per the rules to lead the country till elections are announced. Now, all over the world, the one headline that followed this announcement was that Justin Trudeau, who was once a darling of the Canadian voters, very, very popular, suddenly lost his mojo and became or started becoming extremely unpopular from the day the message went out that he was sheltering Khalistani supporters and terrorists at the cost of India-Canada relations. Do you agree with the surmise? And also, why do you think he did it?
See, there is no doubt that Justin Trudeau, who was the darling of the voters and in fact revived the Liberal Party to a very great extent, actually took it to its nadir. Today, the acceptability percentage of Liberal Party is just 26%, which is phenomenally low. His own personal approval ratings are below 30%. So he became extremely unpopular, and there is no doubt about it. I think part of the blame at least lies on his cultivation of Khalistani radical elements. The fact is that when you deal with people who have such radical religious extremist ideologies, they are only with you as long as it suits them, because they are not going to make compromises with their basic ideology. And that's what happened. This alliance with these radical Khalistanis actually led to a derailment of Indo-Canadian relations. And mind you, there are enough Indians residing in Canada. The Indian diaspora in Canada is a very large one. Most of the Sikh population is nationalist and Indian. It's only a minuscule but vocal minority of the Sikhs who are Khalistani radicalists. And though he supported them thinking that they will help him garner more votes and more support, but it happened the other way around. I think the bulk of the diaspora went against him, and the Canadians who realized that this man was supporting terrorists. And of course, Canada has a painful history. Justin's father's time, Pierre Trudeau's time, we had the Kanishka bombing, which was one of the largest, which is the biggest terrorist incident in Canada's history. So obviously, even others felt that this sort of tacit support to the radical elements would not augur well for Canada in the long term. And as a result, his approval ratings dropped drastically. And even Jagtar Singh and his party, on whose support he was banking on, withdrew the support. And thereafter, of course, it was just a matter of when rather than if he would resign.
But sir, since many reasons are quoted for, his rising unpopularity, finally he had to take the decision to put in his papers. Those include prices, the housing crisis, there are issues of farmers to a great extent. Do you think it was the Khalistan factor which cost him his job?
See, there is no doubt that would have contributed immensely to his downfall because, as I said, there is a huge Indian diaspora in Canada, and most of it, an overwhelming majority of them are nationalists. In fact, even amongst the Sikh, who are a insignificant number in Canada, most of them are pro-India. It's only a very, very significant minority which is Khalistani radical elements. And I think his perception that these radical elements would garner him the support of the community actually backfired. More significantly, the white Canadians actually realized that he was supporting a rabid, radical religious group which has indulged in acts of terrorism. And I think they were probably reminded of what happened in Kanishka and the fact that its perpetrators still continue to roam free in Canada. So obviously, factors drove them to realize that his continuation in power would not only derail India-Canada relations, and India, as you know, is a thriving economy, the fastest growing large economy despite the slowdown. So obviously, they were all concerned that his policies would affect Canada adversely economically, and of course coupled with that Donald Trump's threat of imposing tariffs, there was actually an economic catastrophe that was actually looming large. So obviously,
and that is why, sir, I think the moment he made his announcement, there was an overwhelming outpouring of joy, which is very strange and weird, seeing the fact that he had come to power with such a heavy majority and was so feted by all world leaders as the new face of Canadian leadership. However, allow me to come to Aditya here. Aditya, there is no doubt that the Canadian establishment under the leadership of Justin Trudeau allowed completely, intolerable things like a float where they glorified the assassination of former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Then there was no visible action when our diplomats were attacked and threatened with life, etc. But the Niger episode did contribute the most, perhaps, or became the tipping point in, souring the India-Canada relations. And now we see headlines just this week that the 4-5 people who were arrested in connection with that alleged plot have been let go by the court in Canada because the prosecution had next to nothing to prove as evidence of that killing.
Well, Smitaji, let's be fair to Justin Trudeau. He is innocently only following his father's footsteps. You know what his father did by completely ignoring the Indian government's intelligence on a possible terror attack that could impact not just Indians but Canadians. That was completely ignored. And this time around as well, in the last 10 years, there have been more than 24 times that India has shared evidence of Khalistani radicals, of gangsters, of people who are taking law into their own hands. And the Canadian government has looked the other way. Not just Justin Trudeau, but his RCMP, his CSIS, and all intelligence and security agencies in Canada have looked the other way when India has approached them. In fact, Canada, to an extent, was trying to harp on the bandwagon of United States by almost issuing threats to India that you will have to work the way we tell you. And they were trying to preach us democracy, the principles of democracy. And what happened to this principles of democracy when they had to take action against Khalistani elements? I mean, from Pannu to Nijjar to all these, 20 to 30 elements, even members of the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, who have gone an open, fertile ground in Canada for years together, there's been no action. And look what's been happening in Canada under the nose of Justin Trudeau now. There's been continuous firing. There is gangland violence. There are drugs that are being used, procured, and made on Canadian soil. And to top it all, I think it's very important to say here that just because you are good looking doesn't mean that you will provide the right governance or the right strategy to take your country forward. And that is absolutely
I
true
think
in the case of
the
Justin
Canadian
Trudeau.
voters are realizing it the hard way. But
Absolutely.
just a quick question here, Aditya. You know, going by the speculation that is on about the election of the new leader, whoever he or she will be, there is a concern that since the Liberal Party will be in power at least till elections are announced, how much of action can we really see just because Justin Trudeau will not be calling the shots? And by the way, he continues to be Prime Minister for the time being.
Till March 24th, Justin Trudeau will continue to be the Prime Minister until the Parliament meets, and there's a entire process within the Liberal Party when they elect their leader. There are 5 of them who are under contention, including an Indian origin, Anita Anand. But I can tell you very firmly, imagine the kind of pressure that Justin Trudeau was in, that not just were there protests happening against Justin Trudeau and his government, but within the Liberal Party, there was a rebellion. In fact, the finance minister of Justin Trudeau was very close to him, had resigned just a couple of weeks ago. And apart from that, regularly there were open calls being made in media, even in national broadcaster CBC, that Justin Trudeau should resign immediately, just because he was power hungry, just because he thought that he will have his way. He continued to be there. But one thing is very clear, just like Alok Bansalji mentioned, the approval ratings of Justin Trudeau are at his lowest. The approval ratings of the Liberal Party also are at its lowest. In fact, the entire bandwagon of going against India, one of the biggest democracies in the world, has gone against the Canadian interest just because they had the Five Eyes intelligence, just because they claim to be the preachers of the global democratic, bandwagon, doesn't mean that, India has to abide by instructions of Canada of how democracy has to be led. So one thing is very clear, that when elections happen, be it in August or before that, Pierre Poilievre, the opposition leader, is certainly going to be the next Prime Minister. That's what scientifically, if we politically study the map of Canada, that's what it seems like.
Yeah, so the big question going around, already being written about a lot in opinion columns, is whether the next government will be different from that of Justin Trudeau, and how different is the question, and whether there will be a course correction vis-a-vis India-Canada ties, seeing the people-to-people relations and contacts that we share so deeply. But Alok Bansalji, want to come back to you, sir, and closer home. We know that whether you look at Kashmir or you look at Afghanistan, our western neighbor Pakistan has been not only harboring but breeding, training and sending terrorists as a matter of state policy, to the extent that the world now looks at Pakistan as the epicenter of terror. If we look at the developments of the past few weeks, the kinds of attacks that are taking place, we know that while the people of Kashmir are now looking at a new dawn and they are enjoying a quality life like the rest of the country, things in Pakistan are going from bad to worse.
There is no doubt that, as Hillary Clinton said, that if you breed snakes in your backyard and hope that they'll bite only your neighbors, you are mistaken. And that's what Pakistan tried to do. Pakistan tried to create these Frankenstein's monsters, thinking that they will devour only their enemies, but they have started devouring them. See, these ideologically charged radical elements are dangerous. They may give you some benefit in short term, but in long term, they are always disastrous. And this Pakistan is realizing it painfully. For a long time, Pakistan wanted Taliban to come to power in Afghanistan. In fact, so much so that Nawaz Sharif, when he was the prime minister, went to London and said that there can be no peace in Afghanistan without Taliban. Now the Taliban have come to power, but they are having a problem with Taliban also. And another thing which has happened is that now all these radical jihadi elements have also transformed themselves. All these radical outfits have realized that when they are coming to power, they need to present a moderate face. We are seeing this in Syria, we saw that in Afghanistan, we are seeing this in Bangladesh, where again the interim regime, though it is not radicalized, but it is the main backers of the regime are Hizbul Tahrir, Jamaat-e-Islami, and they are slowly capturing various organs of the state. As a precursor to capturing the state. So all these organizations now, when they're coming to power and they are vulnerable, they try to project a moderate face. But as they keep consolidating the power, they actually start showing their true colors. The clearest example is Afghanistan. From Doha, they said they'll allow women to work, study, everything. Once they came here, they stopped working, now not studying. And now even the windows cannot be opened.
And now they've closed the windows also.
So that's what I'm trying to say. So this is the pattern. And now Syria, we are seeing a former Al-Qaeda man is now dressing up in suits, etc., to show to the world. But at grassroots level, already the women are being restricted. That how are you moving around without covering your head, etc. So this is what is happening. In Bangladesh also, we are seeing a clear manifestation of moving towards a radicalized society. So if you have to counter such threats and organizations, it's better to do it when they're vulnerable and when they're trying to fool you that they have transformed or they have changed.
Right. But sir, we cannot close this conversation without bringing in the developments in the United States. Do you think with the change of regime in the next few days in the United States, some kind of visible change can be seen in the context of Bangladesh and in the long term in Pakistan also? Because US has always been considered a very active player in allowing Pakistan to do what it does.
There is no doubt that there is real fear, especially in Bangladesh. There is a mortal fear because Mr. Yunus is considered very close to Clinton's, and Democratic Party had a lot of support for him. Now with Donald Trump coming, they are really worried because he has said, he has made certain statements which are troubling them. Similarly, in Pakistan, there are already problems actually. And Trump believes in transactional system. He realizes what Pakistan is indulging. And more significantly, Elon Musk has actually come up with a statement saying that till these grooming gangs scandal and all, Pakistan doesn't take any actions against them, all aid to Pakistan must be stopped. So there are threats within Pakistan and Bangladesh with Trump in power. More importantly, his NSA designate is fiercely anti-China, which again will put Pakistan into a little bit of soup. And also, there is now his NSA, who's an Afghan veteran, is saying that the people from Afghanistan who have relocated to USA must be provided and must be resettled till they can find, because there is a danger, there is a mortal danger to their well-being. So right. With these sort of things, I think there is a fear both in Pakistan and Afghanistan that Donald Trump, once he comes, they'll have to behave.
Yes, and with Mr. Trump's relationship with Prime Minister Modi and his trust on India's leadership, I think we have very interesting days ahead. But coming back to Aditya, Alok sir just mentioned the grooming gangs. It will please you to know that in our last episode, we had a very, very rounded and healthy, informative conversation with our friends in the UK on this entire scandal. And there is no doubt that just like Justin Trudeau, who almost, changed the security scenario of his country and his diplomatic capital just because he wanted to please Jagmeet Singh's party, whose support he was surviving on. Similarly, the Labour Party leaders, their MPs, their ministers have always bowed down under the pressure of Islamic radicals because they thrive on that vote bank. And they decided to throw their little girls and teenagers under the bus just because they wanted to ensure good number of votes.
Well, absolutely. I mean, illegal immigration has been a big concern, but lately we have seen the global uprising against illegal immigration, with the consequences of terrorism and radicalization also being figuring out. In UK, for instance, you mentioned the grooming gangs, which has been happening for years together, for decades, in fact. What happened, Smitaji, was that years ago, UK allowed blindly a lot of legal as well as illegal immigration from Pakistan. There are a lot of Mirpuris who have settled there, a lot of Pakistanis who have settled there. In fact, I should mention on your show that one of the first Indian diplomats who was killed was on UK soil, Ravindra Matre in
Yes.
Birmingham
Yes.
in the year 1984. And, since then, the killers of Ravindra Matre have been on the run. In fact, I did a documentary last year, saying that the killer, who was a UK citizen, has been on the run in Pakistan for the last 40 years. Neither the UK government nor the Pakistan government have acted against them. And now, years old cases of grooming gangs, the Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs, are coming out. And imagine Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and his Labour government are completely against a national inquiry against
No,
it.
wait.
Similar scenes are being witnessed in
See,
US and
on this national inquiry, I'm sorry, Aditya, on this national inquiry, they managed to carry the day, because they had a very good majority in Parliament
Yes.
to vote against the inquiry. Now, the question
Absolutely.
that is being discussed everywhere is whether the campaign launched by Elon Musk, for the simple reason that the British media, betrayed their own daughters, this campaign, will it end because the Parliament didn't go for it? Or do you think there is more to come?
I think there's much more to come because it is not just about the grooming gangs. Yes, it's a very sensitive and a major issue. There are a lot of videos that are coming out, a lot of victims that are speaking up now on social media. We have other political leaders who are opposed to Keir Starmer who are coming out and saying that, much needs to be done. Even though the parliament has refused a national inquiry, I think people will hit the streets and there will be a national campaign, a momentum that will be only growing because overall, you see the main crux is the illegal immigration and radicalization that's been happening. Look at what's happening in Germany, in Sweden, in France, and the streets of Europe. If such is the case, then I'm sorry, the kind of attack that you recently saw during Christmas in Germany will only repeat itself. I mean, there will be a day that there will be suicide bombing, just like in Afghanistan has been happening. It will happen in Europe as well. If you do not close your gates and have a legal scientific method of letting the immigrants come in. So I think not just US and Canada, but in UK and Europe, there's a churning that's happening. We are at a cusp of history where people are realizing increasingly the harms of radicalization, the harms of illegal immigration, and how the priority has to be elsewhere. You cannot look the other way anymore. And certainly you mentioned Bangladesh and how, the Mohammed Yunus government may be portraying a, liberal face, but in reality, there is a jihadist mindset that is supporting them, and they're giving a long rope to all these jihadist Islamist elements who are attacking Hindu temples, Hindu pilgrims. And similarly, what's been happening in Pakistan, where minorities have been under attack, and where Pakistan nurtured the TTP for years together, gave them a safe haven, but now the same Taliban has turned against them, and there are scenes, violent scenes now being witnessed on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border.
And now Pakistan has to take military action to deal with it. But last question to you, Alok Bansalji. Sir, as Aditya said, starting from the Canada and US and UK right up to Australia, we are seeing radical elements becoming more and more vocal, raising their heads and threatening the lives of common people, men, women and children even. The question is, as the Prime Minister said in his recent event, that India has always given the message of Buddha and not Yuddha to the world. Are you in agreement that indeed countries and peoples all across continents have started realizing the dangers of radicalization in society, and it is time they will rise up to question the policies wherever these people have been given a safe passage or a safe haven?
See, there is no doubt that they should realize the dangers of radicalization. I'm not too sure if everybody has started realizing the dangers of radicalization. And one of the reasons is very often...
So what will it take, sir, to
most
bring the
people
truth
don't
to light?
understand. don't understand the motivation of these radical elements. Till the time they don't understand the ideology that governs them, it will be difficult. And I have been trying to tell them for a very long time, in fact, in all my interactions with the West, that this is a danger which you are trying to justify as a socio-economic factor. Its basis lies in theology. You have to understand the theology that's governing them to this radicalization, and then only you will be able to counter them. Hopefully, after these grooming attacks and somebody powerful like Elon Musk actually bringing it out in the open, there will be pressure on the West to realize what these people are doing, and some action will be taken. Even in UK, there are Labour MPs who have voiced their concerns, and even Sarah Champion, who is actually the MP from that place, had earlier said something against Pakistani men. Of course, she was removed. Now she's again back into the party. So she and others would want some action to be taken against these grooming gangs and issues like that. But radicalization is a major problem which the globe will have to tackle.
Yes, sir. And if I may just add, a mayor who is a well-known face of the Labour Party, even he questioned his leader, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and said the government should actually, instead of going for the vote, they should have unilaterally announced the inquiry on a national level. So certainly, we may not have reached that inflection point, that tipping point where the world will rise up against radicalization, but slowly and surely, from Canada to the US to the UK, people are realizing the dangers, and there will be a change in thinking which is sure to bring change in state policy also. But thank you, gentlemen. We've almost run out of time. Aditya Rajkaul for joining us at such a short notice, and Mr. Alok Bansal, always so gracious, sir, to join us whenever we have requested you. We will keep an eye on what is developing in the Western world as also in our neighborhood. But for now, it's a wrap up on Media Scan for this weekend. Do join us next weekend for another issue of national importance. Till then, namaskar.